One day it all comes crashing down because of one shocking act. What would you do? What would you do if you found out that the person you trusted most was hiding something terrible from you? This pivotal moment will change everything you've known about love and betrayal. Now pay attention. Are you ready to learn a truth that will shake you to the core? Only the most attentive will be able to guess how this incredible story will end. I was sitting in my car surrounded by sand and soldiers when I received the news that I was divorced. We had been married for almost 4 years. I spent nearly a year and a half of that time in a hot, dry country on the other side of the world. She couldn't take it anymore, and I completely understood. I didn't even try to dissuade her. Being a military wife is the second toughest job in the world. Being a parent is much more difficult. My home was in Ponca City, Oklahoma. This is where I grew up and met and married Lisa Thompson. We were each other's first love. She was the first and only girl I dated in high school and in the college community. After college, I joined the Army and she went to college and became a nurse. We got married after our graduation and were assigned to Fort Belvoir, Virginia. We stayed there for a little over a year before I was ordered to go abroad. Lisa chose to return to Ponca City instead of staying in Belvoir. She began working at the hospital almost immediately after her arrival. When my year abroad came to an end, I returned to Belvoir and Lisa joined me. We had a great time together for 13 months before I was ordered overseas again. Lisa returned to Ponca City once more. Neither of us was happy about this second separation, but we accepted that it was part of Army life. I had been in the country for about 6 months when I received a letter from Lisa saying that she could no longer bear to be apart. I married you to be with you day and night. We've been married for almost 4 years, and for more than a quarter of that time you've been on the other side of the world. I can't live like this. Please understand that I love you, but this loneliness is driving me crazy. I am including divorce papers in this letter. If you love me, if you care about my happiness, please sign them. I wrote her a long letter expressing my regret that she felt the way she did, but that I completely understood. I told her I wanted her to be happy, and if divorce was going to do that, then so be it. I told her I loved her and signed the papers. A few months after receiving the divorce notice, I returned to the States and was transferred to Washington, D.C. at the Pentagon, which was practically next door before Belvoir. She was still in Ponca City, and I assumed she was working at the hospital. I wanted to call her but decided against it. Why tear open old wounds? I asked myself. I earned my associate's degree before joining the military, and through a lot of effort, correspondence courses and on-base classroom instruction through the University of Maryland, I earned my degree. It was a Monday morning, and I had just arrived at my office at the Pentagon. I drank my first cup of coffee and checked my schedule for the day when the call came at 8:45. My father had a massive heart attack and died. By mid-afternoon, I was already on the plane home. There are no commercial airlines in Ponca City, so I flew into Oklahoma City and rented a car. My brother Matthew, Matt, my sister Tina, and their spouses were with my mother when I entered the house. Matt had been on the police force since he was 21. Tina, like my mother, was a teacher. I immediately walked over to my mom, who was sitting on the couch between Matt and Tina. She saw me and we both started crying. Matt stood up so I could sit and hug my mom. When we both calmed down, she told me that Dad had a heart attack while he was cleaning the interior of his favorite car, a 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air convertible. He died in that car, and he wouldn't have wanted to die any other way. She almost smiled as she said it. The next couple of days were busy with preparations for the funeral. Dad was a veteran, so the military took a lot of the burden off Mom. We 3 children didn't make any decisions. She and Dad had discussed what they each wanted, and she did just that. The only thing she asked me to do was to wear my dress uniform to the funeral. It still hung in the closet in what had once been my bedroom. I didn't need it abroad or in Washington, yet it just needed cleaning and I needed to attach my medals and badges. The morning of the funeral arrived and my mother looked at me, walked over and brushed an invisible speck of dust from my chest. Then she stopped, looked at me and kissed me. Your father was proud of you. Later that day, Matt and I stood at the casket, greeting people as they passed by. We hadn't been there long when Lisa, my ex-wife, appeared. I extended my hand to shake hers, but she ignored it and hugged me. I'm sorry, Michael. I was always Michael, never Mike, to everyone. I loved your father. Me too, I said. She seemed to want to say something else but couldn't. The end of the day arrived, and the family gathered at Mom's house, enjoying the abundance of food that friends had brought. Mom had shown incredible strength throughout all of this. The sun had just set when the phone rang. Mom and Dad still had a landline. Hello, she answered. There was a pause. Wait, Michael, there's a call for you. I took the phone from her. She looked at me and raised her eyebrows. Hello, I said. Hello, Michael. Hello, Lisa. This caught the attention of everyone in the room. Can we talk, she asked. I don't think we have anything to talk about. You made your decision and we're both probably better off for it. I'm not so sure anymore. Well, it's water under the bridge. I have an early flight in the morning, so I'll be heading to Oklahoma City soon. I'll spend the night there, so I've got to go. Where do you serve? She asked before I could hang up. Listen, Lisa, I don't have much time to spend with my family. Thanks for coming today. Goodbye. I hung up, turned around, and everyone was looking at me. We're divorced. It's over. I'm fine. She's fine, I told them. Now I need to change and get ready. I have to leave soon. Soon after, I packed my bag and was ready to leave. Hugs, kisses, and handshakes were exchanged, and I finally walked out to my rental car. The next day, I was back in Washington. One of the good memories I have from Lisa is the love of classical music, especially Beethoven and Bach. Brahms was never a particular favor of mine. 2 weeks after returning to Washington, the National Symphony Orchestra presented a program of some of Beethoven's works. Bagatelles were one of the pieces, as was his Symphony No. 7 Op. 92. The program was eclectic, also including works by Copland and Bernstein. Tickets were hard to come by, but the Military District of Washington could usually get tickets to major events in the area, so I contacted Recreational Services and was able to get one. The evening of the concert arrived, and I headed to the Kennedy Center. I had been there before and loved the place. The first half of the program was entirely devoted to Beethoven. At intermission, I grabbed a drink and returned to my seat. Other spectators also returned to their seats. One couple walked down my road to their seats to my right. The woman walked ahead of the man. I moved to make it easier for them to pass. As the woman walked past me, she stepped on my foot. High-heeled stilettos can cause a lot of pain when they hit the top of the foot. I screamed quite loudly, which made her lose her balance and fall on me. This made me fall back into my seat. She lost her balance and then fell into my lap. I don't know how I managed not to drop or spill my drink. We just sat there looking at each other. It was nice for me to just smell her. The perfume she wore was taboo. My ex-wife wore it too, and it always had a strange effect on me. How is your leg? She finally asked. Not bad. We sat there for a couple of seconds looking at each other until she spoke again. You know, we're going to have to stop meeting like this. Why? I asked. We heard someone clear their throat. We looked and it was her companion. She gave me one last look and stood up. She smiled and moved down the road to her seat. At the end of the concert we all left. I found myself behind her. I looked for her companion and did not see him. I tapped her on the shoulder. She turned around and recognized me. Taboo? I asked. Yes. How do you know? This is my favorite scent. And mine too. Where's your friend? He's somewhere in the crowd. Behind your husband? God, no. Serious relationship? No. In that case, will you give me your phone number? Rarely. I'm a pretty rare type of guy. She laughed. People around us began to take an interest in our conversation. Some laughed, others murmured disapproval. We walked through the foyer to the main door. She stopped. I'd better wait for my friend. Would you like some company? For in that case, I think it's time for me to leave. It was my pleasure that you stepped on me. She laughed again, and I enjoyed spending some time in your lap. I laughed and waved as I walked out through one of the many doors. I looked back and she waved back. It had been almost a month since attending the Beethoven concert, and I was ready for the next one. It didn't have to be Beethoven, but almost any classical music concert would be good. I checked the Kennedy Center schedule and saw that there was a concert featuring the music of Maurice Ravel next week. I went to recreational services to inquire about a ticket. There was only one left. I took it. When she gave me the ticket, she said we could only get 2 of these tickets and the seats would be side by side, so I would sit next to the colonel's wife. I was a staff sergeant at the time. Military personnel and officers, even their wives, rarely communicated in the same circles. In my work, I interacted with 2 colonels and several lieutenant colonels and majors at the Pentagon. Captains and lieutenants were even rarer than staff sergeants. I had never met the colonel's wife. However, this did not bother me because I was going to listen to music. The evening of the concert arrived, and I put on one of my 2 suits and headed there. I arrived at my seat early and was reading the program when I felt it taboo. I looked up and there she was. I stood up and spoke. I thought you said you weren't married. I'm not married either. I was told that the colonel's wife would be sitting next to me. My mother is married to a colonel, she explained. She sat down and introduced herself. By the way, my name is Connie Self. I took her hand. Michael Carter. So, Mike, do you like Ravel? Mike? No one had ever called me Mike before, but I didn't correct her because when she said it, it sounded like she was inviting intimacy. Yes, especially Gaspar de la Nat. We talked before the program started and during intermission we had a drink in the lobby and talked some more. The program ended with Bolero, which some consider the most boring piece of music, but others find it the most sensual. I belong to the latter group. After the start, I glanced at Connie from time to time, and a couple of times I caught her looking at me. It eventually ended, and I decided that if it affected her sensually, she hid it well. I walked her to her car. She opened the door and I held it. She was about to sit down but turned to me. Aren't you going to ask for my number? I looked at her. I asked for your number the first time we met, but that was before I knew you were the daughter of a colonel. Listen, I said, I'm a staff sergeant. You're a colonel's daughter. I'm sure your father wouldn't approve of you hanging out with someone like me. Who said anything about inclusion? Friendship does not depend on rank. That's not what I meant. What did you mean? She smiled at my confusion, got into the car and drove away. Maybe I just completely screwed up, Staff Sergeant Michael Carter, I thought to myself. 3 days later I answered the phone at the office. Special Operations, Sergeant Carter. How may I help you? You can help me by writing down 10 numbers, said appealing voice I had ever heard. As she spoke, I could almost smell the taboo she was wearing. I'm sorry. You heard me. Now write them down. She began to name numbers, and I dutifully wrote them down. Now repeat them, she said. I repeated them. Well done. Now you know what to do with them. I think I'm starting to understand. Another well done for you. Keep up the good work and you might get a gold star. Yes, ma'am. Don't make me wait too long. She hung up. My first thought was how she got my number, but then I realized that her father, like the other 30,000 people working at the Pentagon, had access to the Pentagon phone book. That evening I used these numbers but there was no answer, so I left a voicemail. The next evening she called me. You didn't hesitate, she said. You said not to keep you waiting. She laughed. We talked the same way the next night and the night after that. However, one night was different. Will you ever ask me out on a date? She asked. I would like to, but what? Damn it, either you want it or you don't. What's your answer? I want to. Then do it. Okay. Do you want to go out to dinner with me? Of course. When? Tomorrow night.
Great. What time? At 7 o'clock. 7 it is. She gave me her address. She lived in a 2-room apartment. As she showed me around the apartment, she seemed especially proud of her shoe collection. There were very few clothes in the guest bedroom closet. The rest of the space was filled with shelves. These shelves were filled with shoes, hundreds of pairs of shoes. She proudly showed them to me. I was glad that she did not live with her parents. I was still unsure how they would react to her dating a private soldier. We dated for 2 months before we had intimacy. In fact, it happened the same night I met her parents for the first time. She invited me to have dinner with them. She noticed my hesitation. "Come on, Mike. They won't bite. They're normal parents." Of course, they're nosy because I've never invited anyone to dinner with them before. Or do they know I'm a private? Stop talking about it already. It's just. I'm sorry. One more word about your rank and I'll get really angry. So enough about that. Dinner went surprisingly well. I liked Colonel Jacob's self and his wife Marion, and they seemed to like me. When Connie and I left that night, her father walked us to the door. His parting words, and I believe them, were, "It was nice to meet you. We hope to see you again." That night in her apartment, we undressed and made love. 14 months later, we got married. Newly minted Brigadier General Jacob and Mrs. Marion Self became grandparents. The girl was named Ruth, and she was born in Virginia, while I was still serving at the Pentagon. Then came granddaughter Carrie, born in Germany, and finally, grandson Jacob while we were stationed at Fort Lewis, Washington. We started calling them Big Jake and Little Jake. Life was good. Big Jake and Marion retired and moved to Florida, while Connie and I found ourselves back at the Pentagon. Connie, the kids, and I were in Florida visiting her parents. Connie and her mother took Ruth and Carrie shopping. Big Jake and Little Jake played in the backyard, and I watched and smiled. My phone rang. There had been an accident. An elderly couple in their new motorhome crossed the center strip and crashed into the car driven by Connie. Apparently, the old man had a heart attack while driving. He died, but his wife was in the back of the caravan and survived with many bumps and bruises after being thrown violently. The three of us rushed to the hospital and found that Connie and Marion had died on the spot. Ruth and Carrie were wounded but survived. They were still in the hospital when we buried Connie and Marion. We buried them nearby. The next 2 months were the most difficult of my life. Both of my daughters spent almost 3 weeks in the hospital. Big Jake and I practically lived there. I was heartbroken, but life had to go on. The girls were released and we went home, but it was not easy. We returned to our house for the first time since we went to Florida, and the 4 of us had to grieve all over again. Everywhere we looked, we saw Connie. Clean clothes were in an unfolded basket, and a dressing gown lay across the bed. Her clothes were hanging in her closet. Being in this house with reminders of her everywhere was almost as painful as losing her a second time. The 4 of us cried for days, but it was even worse for Ruth and Carrie. They never had the opportunity to say goodbye to either their mother or grandmother because they were in the hospital and could not attend the funeral. It was difficult, but every morning I got up, got the kids ready for school and went to work. It took a long time before I became productive again. The children missed their mother as much as I did. It didn't take me long to realize that being a single parent of 3 young children was incredibly difficult. 3 years after Connie died, I left the army, the children, and I returned to Oklahoma. We bought a nice house not far from my mother, and my brother and sister also lived nearby. My kids seemed to enjoy spending time with their cousins. Connie was an only child. It took me a while to calm down, and after a few months I started to worry. I applied for and received a substitute teaching position at one of our 2 high schools. If all goes well, I will be hired full-time next school year. Life was going well, but I still missed Connie as did the kids. One Saturday evening, Ruth began complaining of pain in her side. It got worse, so I hurriedly took her to the hospital. My sister Tina came to pick up little Jake and Carrie. Ruth was immediately set for surgery, and her appendix was removed. I was going to spend the night with her. She was sleeping, and I fell asleep sitting next to her in the chair. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and was sitting in a chair next to her bed. I watched as the door slowly opened, and light from the hallway began to fill the room. It took a long time, but I still recognized her. She was still a very attractive woman. "Hello, Lisa," I said. She hesitated, then recognition overtook her. "Oh God, I didn't know you were here." "Well, I'm here. Come in." I stood up as she approached the bed. "How is she?" she asked. You should know better than me. You're right. Her chart says she's doing well. Fine. I saw her name on the admissions list. There aren't many Carters in town, so I thought she might be either Matt or Tina. No, she's mine. Where is her mother? She died more than 3 years ago. Oh, Michael, I'm so sorry. Yes, me too. Do you live here now? Yes, for several months now. We just stood and looked at each other. Finally, I spoke. Well, I guess I should try to get some sleep. Certainly, she said, and she left. I woke up around 5 o'clock with a blanket on. I spent most of the next 3 days with Ruth. Lisa came in several times. She and Ruth talked about boys, and how they would react to her scar when she wore a swimsuit. It's a very small scar, Lisa said. And besides, when they see how beautiful you are, they won't even notice it. Ruth smiled brightly. The first Saturday after Ruth was released from the hospital, I received a call. I looked at the number but didn't recognize it, so I didn't answer. The caller left a message. Hi, this is Lisa. I hope Ruth is okay. Time in the hospital always seems worse for kids. There was a pause. Can I talk to you, please? Over the years, I've had so many things I wish I could tell you but never got the chance. Please, Michael. I listened to this message at least 5 times before calling her back. Hello, she answered.
Hi, it's Michael. Hello. Did you want to talk? Not over the phone. In person. Okay. Mom is taking the kids to the lake tomorrow. Tomorrow? Why don't you come over to my house around 10:30 a.m.? Or do you have to work? No, tomorrow will work. Where do you live? I gave her the address. Are you still drinking coffee? Yes, but now decaffeinated. It's the same with me. She arrived exactly at 10:30. She was always punctual. The coffee was already on the table when I opened the door for her. It seemed to me that she wanted to hug me but changed her mind. I showed her where to sit. She sat down, took a sip of coffee and began. It was 9 months after your first tour overseas. I was having an affair. I was having a hard time without you, and I was waiting for you to come back. Sammy Young saw me at the mall and started talking to me. Do you remember him? I shook my head. He was 2 years ahead of us at school. That conversation led to another and so on, and we ended up meeting for drinks and dinners. Almost 2 months later I slept with him once. She took another sip of coffee. When you returned, I was terrified that you would find out, but you were so happy to see me that the thought that I might be unfaithful didn't even cross your mind. You probably remember that we had a wonderful year. I nodded in agreement. Then you had to go abroad again and I came back here. You had only been away a couple of weeks when he showed up again. I don't know how he knew I was back in Ponca. The thought of going through another year without you was unbearable. Less than a month after you left, I slept with him again. She continued. We continued to meet for another 2 months. Then I found out that I was pregnant. That's when I asked you for a divorce. I told him, and he disappeared in an unknown direction. I've seen him around town since then, but we never talk. After I filed for divorce, I lost my child. I almost called off the divorce, but the guilt was so great that I didn't do it. I tried to tell you what I did when you came home for your father's funeral, but you wouldn't let me. Cheating on you is the worst thing I've ever done, and I regret it every day. I was selfish and greedy, and I can offer no excuses. I loved you when we were young. I loved you when we got married, and I loved you when we got divorced. All these years I tried to avoid your family because I was ashamed. We met occasionally by chance, but that was all. 2 years after our divorce, I met a man in the hospital. His mother was in surgery. We liked each other and got married a year later. 3 years after that, we divorced. Since then, I have focused on my work. Then I saw Ruth's name at the hospital. Like I said, I've been avoiding your family, but I thought if she needed anything, I could get it. I opened the door and you were there. I am rarely surprised and never shocked, but seeing you shocked me. I didn't know how to behave or what to say. When I left her room, I walked down the hall and burst into tears. I cried for 2 hours, cried with happiness that you were alive and well, then cried for the stupid thing I did and for the love I lost. I took a sip of my coffee, which was already cold, and so was hers. I sat looking at her and tried to think of what to say. I had obviously not known she had cheated on me, and didn't know she had gotten pregnant by someone else while married to me. Finally, I spoke. I don't know what to say. I always assumed that you wanted a divorce because you couldn't bear to be apart from us. But you say loneliness wasn't the problem at all, lust was the problem. I understood loneliness. I loved you enough to let you go because I couldn't bear the thought of you being alone. That's why I agreed to the divorce. But betrayal is difficult for me to comprehend, even after so many years. The idea that you slept with another man while you were married to me is something I find hard to come to terms with. I loved you enough to let you go, and while I was crying over losing you, you had a child with another man. I stood up, walked over and picked up her cup, taking it to the kitchen. I think you should leave, I said as I walked. Michael, please. Goodbye. She slowly stood up and walked to the door, opened it and turned to me. Michael, goodbye. Why the hell did she have to tell me this? Does it matter after all these years? And why does this affect me so much? At first I was angry, then I just got angry. I fumed for 2 weeks because of what she told me. Then my common sense took over. Why should it matter now? We have been divorced for many years and I no longer have feelings for her. The end of the school year was approaching and it was a busy time for me, so Lisa took a back seat. Big Jake asked if the kids could spend part of the summer with him. I told him yes, of course. 3 days after finishing school he arrived. We met him at the airport, and the children flew off with him. Their visit was to last 2 weeks, that's all Big Jake thought he could handle. I haven't had much of a personal life since Connie died, and 3 years is a long time. There were a few women along the way, but I still missed Connie. My brother and sister tried to set me up with women, but nothing worked. I mean, there was no spark, no connection. Oh, I slept with a couple of them, but it was just physical relief. My brother had by then become deputy chief of police. One day he came to my house. I had just finished mowing the lawn and was sitting on the porch with a glass of iced tea. He went inside, poured himself a glass, then came out and sat with me. We chatted for a few minutes before the real reason for his visit became clear. I shouldn't tell you about this, but since it's a matter of public domain, I think it's okay. Lisa has been arrested 3 times in the last few weeks for public intoxication. Every time my officers tried to bring her in, she would spank them and tell them to keep their hands off themselves because she belonged to Michael Carter. The first time she said it, the officer thought it was funny and told me. Then she said it 2 more times. Her father bailed her out, and he decided not to pursue the case when it happened for the last time last week. She decided to check into an alcohol rehab program in Tulsa. She's there now. I shook my head. Why are you telling me this? Her father thinks it has something to do with you. He didn't know you were back in town until the first time Lisa got drunk and started talking about seeing you and your daughter. When she sobered up, he asked about it, but she didn't discuss it. The last time he remembers her drinking at all was during your divorce. He told me she usually doesn't drink much. I sighed. My question is the same. Why are you telling me this? Honestly, I don't know. It just seems like she's screaming for help and you're the person she seems to be reaching out to her for. I took a deep breath and told him about our. The story we're diving into today centers around Jeff's wife's younger sister, Marie, the one person in the world he desperately wishes to avoid. Marie's actions contributed to Brenda, Jeff's wife, being unfaithful and ultimately meeting her demise. The sound of dirt hitting the coffin was dull, matching the dreary day. I stood there, watching as the minister said some words meant to ease the suffering of those left behind. My daughter held my hand, her husband standing just behind us, offering comfort with his hand on my shoulder. My son stood next to me, his girlfriend beside him. At 49 years old, I never expected to be standing at a gravesite burying my wife. I had always believed deep down that I would be the first to go. I thought my work and the way I had lived my life would ensure I'd be an old man when my time came. Now I felt old, ancient. After the funeral, there was a reception with everyone coming up to me, expressing their condolences, praising her greatness, our wonderful relationship and her youthful spirit. Yet they said everything but what I needed to hear. We had been married for over 20 years, raised 2 kids who were now on their own. My youngest, or rather my daughter, was married and about to have my first grandchild. My oldest, my son, worked in New York City in the financial district, and both were doing well. With all the people at our house, I suppose it was now my house. I was struggling to adjust to this newfound singleness. Everything for the last 20 years had been ours, not mine. Anyway, there were about 40 people around talking and offering their support. I just wanted to be alone at that moment. Feeling fed up, I finally slipped out into the backyard and made my way to the back gate, intending to take a short walk. As I closed the gate, someone drove up the alley and parked their car right next to where I was standing. "Jeff, how are you holding up?" It was Marie, my wife's younger sister. She was the last person in the world I wanted to see at that moment. You see, in my heart, it was partially Marie's fault that my beloved wife was gone. Okay, maybe that wasn't entirely fair to Marie or my late wife, but I couldn't help feeling that if Marie had kept her interests to herself, Brenda would still be here with me. "I'm just going for a walk, Marie. Everyone is inside. You've been mentioned." I didn't smile, nor did I openly invite her. I just stated the facts as I saw them. I now wanted to be away from here for certain, and I was sure Marie would try to invite herself on my walk. I should have known better. She just burst past me and went into the backyard. She had always been all about Marie. That's why when Marie took a sudden interest in Brenda's personal life, I became suspicious. It was out of character for her younger sister in many ways. I sighed, glad to be free of her for the moment. There was a cloud hanging between us and a chasm that to me seemed insurmountable. Now, family or no, Marie was persona non grata around me. It's a long story about what happened, and how it all mushroomed into the funeral today. Life goes on just like water in a river, always moving relentlessly onward. Okay, now here's my story. This is what happened in my life. Brenda and I met after college at her job. I had gone to the insurance company she worked at to renew my house and car insurance policies, and she was the agent assigned to me. I found myself making excuses to go back after our initial meeting, and somewhere along the way, I finally got the nerve to ask her out. After several months of dating, we realized we were deeply in love with each other, so we got married. 2 children and a full, wonderful marriage followed, right up until 2 years ago. Anyway, I had never questioned marrying Brenda. We were like 2 peas in a pod and very compatible. Then, Marie took an interest in Brenda's life. I'm sure she was well-meaning. Marie probably thought that Brenda needed to reach out and grow. Everything one could see in a person who was trying to be better and more loving toward those around her, you could see in Marie. She was trying hard to help Brenda with what she perceived as shortcomings. It started with Wednesday night girls' night out. Soon it grew to Wednesday and Fridays with Vincent added. After a while, it seemed that Marie was spending more time with Brenda than I was. Of course, that was only true because Marie was capitalizing on Brenda's time when I would normally have been at home. It soon became all about Marie, and when it became a daily occurrence, I started to withdraw from Brenda. Every time I tried to spend quality time with my wife, Marie seemed to be there. Whenever I wanted Brenda to be with me, Marie appeared to be more important. Every time I suggested taking Brenda out for dinner, it turned out to be one of those girls' nights. Soon, our once communicative and open relationship became closed off and non-communicative. I couldn't express how I felt without Brenda getting angry and defensive, accusing me of being hard and unfair to her younger sister. If all I was going to do was upset my wife by trying to be with her, why would I bother? A few months after the growing girls' night out invaded my life, I could see that my marriage was in serious trouble. Yet I couldn't talk to my wife about it without her becoming angry and defensive. So I did the worst thing I could have done. I gave up. I spent my time doing what I wanted, and Brenda began to do her own thing as well. On our rare nights at home together, we were like 2 strangers living in the same house. Then one night, or rather one morning, it started the night before, all hell broke loose. I was at home, working in the garage on a project I had going. It was a Friday night, and Brenda and Marie had gone out on their regular Friday night outing. They left the house around 6:30, and I found myself making my own dinner, something I had been doing more and more often. Eating in the garage seemed to be the simple thing to do, so I got dinner ready and took it out there, listening to my boombox as I worked and ate, which soothed me. I worked until 11 and then went inside. I half expected Brenda to be in bed already, but I was a bit surprised that she wasn't even home yet. I saw the light flashing on the phone, indicating a waiting message. It was Brenda's voice. "Jeff, I'm staying at Marie's tonight. We've been out a bit longer, and it's too late for me to drive home in the condition I'm in. I'll see you in the morning." Why bother, I thought to myself. I never see you anymore anyway. Just move in with your damn sister and be happy. I'll admit I was mad and jealous. I felt like I had lost something when Marie took such a special interest in her sister, and now I couldn't seem to find a way to get my wife back. I missed being with Brenda. I missed our conversations, the laughter, the gentle chatter of a couple who knew each other very well. And most of all, lately it seemed I missed the intimacy we had once shared with each other. I replayed the message before deleting it, and that's when I heard men's voices in the background. There were men at Marie's house with my wife, and it sounded like a party was going on. I picked up the phone and dialed. After 9 rings, someone finally picked up, a man's voice on the other end. "Yeah, it's your dime. Don't waste it," he said. "Let me speak to Brenda, please." "Is she the one with long hair?" "She's a bit tied up at the moment. Maybe call back tomorrow, like around noon." I redialed the phone. Nobody picked up. I tried 3 times over the next half hour, getting madder and madder. Finally I had had enough. Grabbing my car keys off the counter, I left the house and drove over to Marie's. There was nobody home at her place. That's when I remembered I had dialed Brenda's cell phone. I had no idea where she was or who she was with. I didn't know if she was there on her own or if she had been kidnapped. I knew nothing. I drove home, madder than I'd ever been, mad and scared. I went in and made myself a drink. At some point, I decided that Brenda was doing this of her own free will, and that the cops couldn't or wouldn't do anything about it for 24 hours. Anyway, I had gone so far as to even think that Brenda had invited the men to be with them. My mind was playing tricks on me now, and the alcohol wasn't helping me see things better. In the morning, I woke up with a hell of a headache and a dry cotton mouth. I rummaged around and took a shower, then got dressed. Taking a bottle of aspirin in hand, I took some and then, after a thought, took a few more. It was an 8 aspirin headache. Today, in the mirror, I saw a man with that haunted, lost look. I sat around after eating a light breakfast and waited for either a phone call or Brenda to come home. Around 2 o'clock she pulled up in the driveway. Walking in, she looked great, freshly showered and wearing one of my favorite dresses. It was slinky and tight-fitting, revealing lots of leg and a bit of cleavage. In the past, Brenda had only worn it when she went out with me, and even then, only if she wanted to get intimate that night. "Sorry for not getting home last night, dear," Brenda said. "Marie and I had a few too many, and then by the time we got to her place I was real tired, too tired to drive, so I crashed at her place. Oh yeah, I slept until just a little bit ago, took a quick shower, and here I am." "Oh, what's wrong, Jeff? You seem upset." "Well, I called your cell last night several times. After the first call, it seems that the person who picked up said you were tied up. I told him that I was your husband and he hung up on me. Nobody would pick up after that. Now I see the dress you were wearing and I have to ask myself, did you wear it for some other man? I am also wondering where you wore it since I drove over to Marie's and neither of you was there." Her place was dark. Brenda sat down, but unfortunately she missed the chair. She had turned as I was talking, and upon hearing that I had called and a man had picked up her cell phone, she went white in the face. I guess she thought that the easy chair was a bit closer to her than it was, but she missed it by a foot or so. She didn't move from the floor though. Her hands were on her face and she was crying. I couldn't stand it, as it was plain as day that she had done something she was ashamed of. I got up and stormed out to the garage. I locked the door behind me and cranked up the stereo as loud as I could stand it. I didn't accomplish much other than banging things around for a couple of hours and mostly just cussing at Marie, Brenda, and the guy on the phone from last night. By the time I cooled off and shut down the stereo, I had begun to think about my marriage and how it was all unraveling around me, all because of Marie. As far as I was concerned, before Marie, Brenda and I had been happy and loving to each other. Since Marie, we had drifted apart, and now it seemed Brenda was seeking happiness or satisfaction from another man, or worse, men. In the hours out of my shop, I came to the realization that I had probably lost Brenda for good. We were headed for a divorce. Going into the house, I found myself alone. Brenda was gone somewhere, and I will admit I was thinking she had run to Marie's for support. I went to our bedroom and got a shock when I saw Brenda's dresser drawers open and empty. Looking in the closet, I saw just a few items here and there, things she hardly wore anymore. She had left me. Being that it was a set, I only had the option of online banking available to me. So, I went online and began to work out how to move money around and protect myself in case Brenda decided to leave me permanently. I was not going to lose out financially after having worked so many years to build up a nice savings account and bank account. After that, I called a buddy of mine who had been through a divorce, and we made a date to get together and talk about Brenda and me. I called our kids and told them things between their mom and me had gotten strained and she may have moved out. My daughter asked me where, and I honestly said I didn't know. 1 week went by with me working every day hard and busy to keep my mind off my downward spiraling home life. At night I would drink and sleep, getting up just in time to shower before heading back to work. That set 1 week to the day since the last time I had seen my wife. I met up with my buddy and we talked. He didn't have much advice for me other than what I already sort of knew: protect my assets first, then worry about her and what she may do or want or try to do. I never heard from Brenda the whole week, no phone calls, no stopping by work, nothing. By Saturday night, I was certain she had given up on us way before last week, and was now shacked up with some other man. I finally called Marie's house that night too. Marie was home and quite surprised to find out that Brenda wasn't home with me. I thought she was still mad at me and sticking close to home. You haven't seen her at all, Jeff. That's not right. What happened between you two? You happened, Jeff. That's awfully harsh. You don't mean that. Yes, I do. We were fine until you started taking Brenda out every Wednesday, Friday, and some nights. You and your girls' nights out destroyed us, Marie. I hope you achieved whatever it was you were aiming for. She's gone, and I am sure we are about to get divorced. If she's not with you, she must be with that guy that answered her phone last Friday night. Though you know about last Friday night then. I know that Saturday afternoon, she showed up at home in her wanna-get-laid dress, all freshly showered. Then I told her about some strange guy answering her phone, and she just sat on the floor and cried. Later on, when I came in from the garage, she had packed her things and left me. So thanks, Marie. You and your actions cost me my wife. Don't ever come around me again. I heard her yelling not to hang up, but I was too mad to listen to her. I just wanted to shut everything out, her, Brenda, that other man, and life in general. Furious didn't describe my feelings or thoughts. Just hearing Marie on the phone was enough to set me off. I was angry all over again, angry and lost. My wife was off somewhere and I knew not where, and I had no way of fixing things. After shouting into the phone, I slammed it down so hard I broke the handset. Now I had to buy a new phone on top of everything else. It was a while before I decided to get up and go to bed. As I got up, I noted that I had been sitting right where Brenda had collapsed on me not so long ago. By morning, I figured I had actually lost in the equation and would have been far better off just staying up all night drinking. A dreary Sunday morning greeted me, and I was not in any kind of mood to deal with anyone. About noon, I heard a car pull up in our front driveway. Looking out the window, I saw my son climbing out.
Dad, what the heck has gone on around here anyway? Mom came to my place a week ago, upset and crying. Won't talk to me about anything but that you were going to leave her. What's going on? I told you we were having problems, son. Besides, she left me. She packed her things and ran. This is the first time I knew where she was at all this time. Yeah, Mom came to my place. Well, it was kinda embarrassing. I had a friend over, and she spent the night. I didn't even know where your mom has been. When did she show up at your place anyway? Sunday after you called and talked to me. She refused to let me call you and talk to you. She wanted me to leave you alone for fear that you'd hunt her down. What's going on, Dad? You're not going to hurt her, are you? I was tired. It had been a week of worry and stress like none I'd ever had before. though my son had to drive over 300 miles on a Sunday to ask me what was going on, and why his mom was at his place, refusing to let him talk to me. Look, last week she went out with your Aunt Marie. Mom told me about that. She ended up missing your call, and somehow you got really angry about it. What got into you? Why would you do that? She missed my call. That's what she told you. That she just missed my call? Yeah, she told me that she missed a call you made, that someone else intercepted it before she knew about it. Then she said you got really mad at her, and she was afraid, so she ran. That isn't quite correct. She missed telling you some important details. Then why don't you tell me what happened, Dad? Last Friday night, your mom went out with your Aunt Marie, like clockwork. I was in the garage working on a few things. For a while, I came in about 11 and found your mom wasn't home yet. I saw she had left a message on the phone that I had missed. She told me she had too much to drink, and was going to stay at Marie's. Okay, she told me that part about the message, I mean. Yeah, well, when she left the message, I replayed it to make sure I understood it right. I've seen you do that lots of times. You always replay messages like that. I replayed it, and in the background I heard men's voices. That worried me, so I called your mom's cell phone. It rang 9 times, and then some strange guy picked up. I asked to speak to her, and he told me she was tied up at the moment, and to call back tomorrow afternoon. I told him I was her husband, and to put her on now. He hung up on me after telling me to duck off. Oh, Mom sort of sugarcoated that part. So, Mom cheated on you? To be honest, I'm not sure what happened, son. She left before we talked about it, but she was acting guilty as hell about something. I haven't talked to her since Saturday afternoon. You two need to talk to each other. Can you come over to my place and talk? I'll be there for either of you, and my new girlfriend will be there too. You need to at least talk about what's going on. You have too many good years together to just toss them away like this, Dad. I'll talk, but will your mother if you show up? I'll make sure she is there. Oh, just come as you are, Dad, and no guns or weapons or junk, okay? I mean, I know you're mad and everything, and your talk may ignite more anger between you two, but you need to work things out or figure out what you're going to do. You can't stew on this for very long, neither of you. I'll follow you home. Why don't you just hop in and ride with me? What if your mom and I can't work things out at your place, Mark? I'll make sure you get home okay, Dad. Trust me. During the drive to my son's place, I realized that I still had some love for Brenda, even if she had cheated on me. I think that right at that moment, I was willing to try to work things out with her. When we got to Mark's place, he parked, and we went inside. His girlfriend was sitting with Brenda, and when I walked in, they both got up, looking nervous. Hi, Jeff. Brenda, oh, how have you been? How had I been? What did she think? I started to boil before I could check myself. I started to blow up. I was barely able to curtail my anger in time. How do you think I've been, you cheating? I saw her shrinking from me as I yelled. I had to pause and catch myself. I'm sorry. Oh, I've been okay, I guess. Drinking a bit too much lately, confused about things too. She looked pale and nervous. The woman I loved, the woman I had spent a better part of my life with, was afraid of me. That hurt me deep inside. My heart was breaking. I loved her still, and she was afraid of me. Could we patch things up? The young woman, that must have been the guest, broke in. I'm Jill. You must be Mark's father. I wish we could have met under better circumstances. I took her proffered hand and shook it gently. Me too. I hope that we can get to know each other a bit more. Though Mark hadn't told us he was seeing anyone yet. I glanced knowingly at him. He saw the slight reprimand in my eyes. I'm sure Jill kept me on track. Look, you two need to talk, so Mark and I will be in the other room. If things get sticky or loud, we'll come to the rescue. Okay, you guys. Just sit and talk things over for now. Try to keep your cool, though. This is an apartment building, and the walls and floors are thin. Mark and Jill left us to our own devices. I guess I need to explain things to you, Jeff. First of all, I'm so sorry. I really am. So, you have something you need to be sorry about.
Did you sleep with some guy?
Not exactly. I don't understand. Not exactly is kinda like being half pregnant, dear. It wasn't just one guy, and we didn't sleep more than one guy? Her revelation hit me hard. Frankly, I was flat stunned. She had been with more than one man. This was not the person I had married years ago at all. I didn't know who she was.
You did this openly and freely of your own choice?
Not exactly. I was drunk. I think I had way too much to drink that night. Marie had also been pushing me for weeks to get out. I don't know, maybe I was lonely too. I just don't know how it all came about, but suddenly there I was, on a bed with two men. Actually, it started with just one guy, but by the end, all of them were. Anyway, Marie was there too, and by the end of the night, I had been with all of them. Yes, Marie too. The guys kind of arranged it. I was drunk enough that I guess I didn't think about what I was doing, and how wrong it was until it was far too late. Her revelation hit me like a ton of bricks. I had expected to hear she had cheated on me, but I hadn't figured more than one man, nor her and Marie doing things together either. They were sisters, for Christ's sake. I sat there, not knowing what to say. Our talk had taken about 5 minutes so far, and we were already into the part about her having been with other men. She wasn't hiding, or I didn't think she was hiding anything from me.
She must have read my mind.
I will tell you whatever you want to know, Jeff, if I can. Part of all that went on, I'm not sure how it came to be. I'm not sure when I became a. I am though. I don't know what caused me to forget my wedding vows or my husband waiting for me at home. All I do know is that at one point I heard myself begging for more. I'm a terrible person. I don't deserve you. I don't deserve to live. Her sobs took over her ability to speak and she just collapsed. I watched her, not knowing who this person in front of me was. I didn't say anything. I was too shocked and stunned to even know where to start. This was all too much for me to handle. I began to feel ill. I started to throw up. I calmed down and was able to settle my stomach with a glass of water. Wiping my face off, I returned to the kitchen table. Brenda was in tears, crying softly. I wanted to go to her and hold her. The problem was I didn't know if it would be okay ever again. I sat down heavily, wanting to be able to know what to say or ask without getting sick again. So you and Marie's nights out were for scouting for men then? No, that never happened before. We had gone to a new club. I told you that I had been drinking too much. Anyway, these guys were buying us drinks and dancing with us. They complimented us and made me feel beautiful and playful. Then the next thing I know, I called you and left the message that I was too drunk, and then we went to their place. Lately, I hadn't been paying attention to you. Are you hearing yourself, Brenda? You're the reason, you and your sister. You haven't been letting me even try. I've tried to get you to go out with me, but you've been crying that you and Marie needed to be together. Not only that, but you told me in the message that you were at Marie's. Brenda, you lied to me. No, at the time I thought we were going to Marie's, but men wanted to take us to their place first, though it was just to be for a minute so one of them could pick up something, so we never thought it would be a problem. We ended up becoming there, though. If only I hadn't thought, you should have paid more attention to me. I might have been better prepared to fend off what happened. I couldn't help my voice raising as she mentioned again that she thought it was my fault somehow. I haven't been paying enough attention to you lately? Again with that, God damn it. Need I remind you that you've been the one ignoring me? You're the one who has been going out with Marie every Wednesday, Friday and Saturday night, always Marie this and Marie that. You've blown me off more and more while taking up her cost to me. You're the one who has been pushing me out of your life. I saw from the way her eyes changed that she suddenly realized she wouldn't be able to blame me as much for what she'd done. I know, Jeff. I mean, I didn't realize it was me until now. You're right about that part. You hadn't been paying attention to me because I had been with Marie so much and cutting you off from me, and it pissed you off so much too. You like being a then. You've mentioned it several times. I've never called you a slut, nor have I treated you like one either, you know. I hated Jeff. Hated. Something inside me snapped that night and I found out I liked what I did with those men. It was the tastes, textures, sizes and combinations. I guess it was also different and new to me. Deep down, I loved the different things we were doing, and some of them I'd always wanted to try with you but couldn't bring myself to ask you. I lost myself in the whole mess, and now I've lost you. I hate it because I found myself with other men doing things that I should only have been doing with you and for you. I know that I've driven you away for good now too. Maybe hope shone in her eyes and her whole posture changed. She saw that maybe there was a chance that I'd be able to forgive her and we get past this nasty bit of time. I'd do anything, Jeff. I want to be with you. I want to stay married to you. I won't go out anymore ever unless you are with me. I'll be a stay-at-home wife and do anything you want me to do. I'll do anything, Jeff, anything. So now you're suddenly willing to talk to me and work with me? What about when you were going out with Marie? Are you going to that again later on when things cool off? You know that she drove a wedge between us, don't you? She was taking up all the time that you used to spend with me doing things. Jeff, I'm sorry about that too. I never really realized how much I'd been ignoring you and avoiding you. I don't know why I let myself do that either. Well, it isn't going to be all that simple now, Brenda. You've cheated on me, really. You have been with other men, several of them. How do you think that makes me feel? Do you have any idea of what that makes me feel like, any idea? Then you were going to try to pass it all off to me, saying you stayed with Marie. Would you have kept up the lie after that if I hadn't found out? Are you going to be lying to me from now on too? My voice had risen, and I could feel the hot anger bubbling up. Brenda could see it in my eyes too. I saw her look of fear as my voice began climbing in volume. Mark and Jill slipped into the kitchen at that moment.